Much experience in these specific segments, from being a CEO to driving that on your own as a product leader. Keith, I know with AI as well, being on the big forefront of the conversation, that'll kind of have a lot of impact too. So open and honest, really no wrong answers here as we kind of get those opinions. So with that being said, would love to have you guys kind of just start off with some intros and tell us a quick story about your background. So Keith, if you want to go first.
I'd be happy to. So, serial entrepreneur, first business at 14, which I guess I'll age myself if I said that was 4 decades ago. So, been in tech, been in CPG, owned a marketing agency, and now I'm in the space of marketing AI. We've created a product called Ella. So, it's a SaaS product, and excited to spend some time with you all today.
Thank you. Roz, how about you?
Yeah, sure. I'm in South Carolina. I think it's good to place people when you got them from all over. And let's see, my background, I started also decades ago now in social impact, and just found that technology was kind of the way to have the most impact and things that I cared about. Ended up starting a couple of companies. One of them was a software company that's acquired by Blackbaud, which is the largest software provider to the social impact space, and subsequently ended up running several sort of scaled product organizations within Blackbaud and then within another company, and still kind of in that product space. Now back working on payments and social goods. So that's me.
Amazing. Thank you. And then Keith, could you share again, where are you based out of?
Yeah, Red Lodge, Montana, northeast corner of Yellowstone Park. So come visit.
Perfect. All right. And then Div, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Div. I'm actually joining from San Francisco, California, and super excited to be here. I've been in B2B SaaS product marketing and product management for 13 years now and love it. I want to say that if you cut my wings, you'll probably get product marketing out of it. That's how much I'm passionate about it. And the topic today is very important and key because everything we do in product marketing is connected to the customer, and I want to evangelize being a voice of the customer. So this is definitely top of mind. I'm a mentor and a product marketing leader who's very passionate about bringing mindfulness and authenticity into the workplace. So you also see and hear a lot of sales aspects in my life as well. So thanks you, Brian and Gilda, for this opportunity.
Of course. And so, yep, as Tyga said, everyone, right? Feel free if you have any specific questions that you want to ask the panel, you can drop it in the chats. We'll also, allow people to unmute yourselves if you want to ask it directly. But really, we have a few questions that we want to take throughout the customer journey, right? So that's from customer validation all the way through managing retention, churn, and really just kind of identifying and building upon those ICPs. So the first question we have as we kind of think about customer validation is, what's really the most effective way to identify and validate your customer before scaling? And this could be, again, for anything from SaaS to physical products to service-based, but, we'll kind of put that out for all three of you, whoever wants to go first.
I'm happy to offer maybe a starting thought, which is some of the ways that we have seen AI be most effective is in rapidly building hypotheses and defining and doing the research support of the definition of what those different ICPs are. And so just a big encouragement out there to everybody to use AI, to do research, to use AI, to think about all the attributes that matter. Because at least in my experience as an entrepreneur, everything is just a hypothesis until we get in market. And so rapid iterations on those hypotheses is what we typically advocate.
And as a follow-up, so are there specific tools or through AI, right? What, is that to identify a list or kind of generate the questions, or how are you using AI to kind of identify that early stage user?
Yeah, so in our platform, I'll offer at least an experience in a way we do this. We use tools like deep research that can pull, for example, what's happening in the marketplace, what are the zeitgeist trends, what are the pain points that many people are describing, say, about an existing product or solution that might be out there in the market, or an alternative that might be in the market. So first, doing research. And then secondly, we have built, as just an example, templates into our platform that say, this is what a terrific ICP looks like. This is what a terrific persona looks like. And so our tool asks questions, pulls research, and helps build those hypotheses faster. But you could also use a general tool like, say, Claude or ChatGPT and just say, build me a detailed ICP or build me a detailed persona document, and it'll get you part of the way there.
Great. Roz, Div, anything to add?
Sure.
Yeah, I would say it's great to start with the basics, right? But you also have to go talk to your customers and talk to your prospects. So that's another key element that I've seen valuable anytime we are building personas or trying to make sure you have found your right ICP, right? Your ideal customer profile is not something that happens overnight. And so be diligent, experiment, make sure that you have identified what market are relevant for you, right? Not every target segment is yours. If you say your problem statement is you solve problems for everybody, it means you solve for nobody. So trying to identify that niche is important. So we have spent quite a bit of time looking at B2B SaaS, focusing on account-based marketing and really honing in on that ICP and then iterating. Today, your ICP might not be your ICP for tomorrow. So keeping that open mindset and also leveraging the power of thought leadership can be valuable too.
Perfect. Thank you.
I will add a layer of messiness to all that. Just like ideal ways to do things. And then sometimes there's also real life, right? So I think especially early stage, there's a dynamic relationship between finding your ideal customer and what you're actually selling, right? So as you're learning and talking to people, your whole idea might change. Give a few real world examples. So the software company I mentioned, we had an exit. Like that actually started as my co-founder and I started a consulting company first. And we were working with nonprofits, helping them sort of scale their basically digital marketing. And we found there were things we were doing, time and materials that we were doing over and over. And that led to a product. That product evolved massively over time as we, took it to market and talked to customers and tried to sell to different segments. So things changed there. And then I wanted to also mention for especially like B2B sales, enterprise sales that have a kind of a longer validation cycle, there's usually like two at least customers that you're serving. So at Blackbot, also Mural, we talked about like users and choosers. So Mural had a PLG to B2B sales process, right? So we tried to land with individual users. That's almost like a B2C kind of motion. And what it takes to win their, sort of ongoing usage is completely different than the chooser, which is often like an IT like manager, leader that's going to make that budget decision. And so you've got actually two stakeholders there that you have to have almost an ideal customer profile for each. One who's going to make the financial decision, and then one that's going to be using it and spreading the use throughout the company. So there's often like so many layers to these things that, you've got your theoretical framework and then you've got we're going to sort of find our way through this forest reality.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that and agreed, right? So many different layers as we kind of develop the companies. And I think we have a question from Carol, which I think kind of looks to, again, maybe that earlier stage of identifying that. When you look at, for Carol's case, right, she focuses on tech leadership development within Europe. So how niched should some of these market segments be? For example, with hers, right, tech leadership development in Europe, is that specific enough, or is that still too broad when you think of someone's TAM, SAM?
I would say as a starting point, once you start looking at your own customer base and who you want your clients to be, right? Like Roz said, right? What you sell versus what your ideal could be are two different things at most times. And painting that picture and then working through that will be beneficial. So making sure you identify who your target segments are. And then if you need to narrow it down. But I think tech leadership is a good starting point to work through to make sure you will start to see patterns. And that's what I love about personas and ICP. It's like you can start seeing patterns. There's specific company sizes that you want to go after. Are there specific audiences, persona attributions or motivations that will help you identify these tech leadership segments that you're going after? So it's a great journey to be in, but keep yourself open-minded to make sure that you're not really laser focused on, oh, this is my ICP, I have to find them. be able to pivot and then adapt as you need to. And that will give you a great scenario to work with that.
Maybe just two additional comments on that. One is, as we think about persona development, the opportunity to experiment really quickly changes also when you think about AI as an enabler or an augmentation. So pivoting very, very fast. It used to be true, for example, that you couldn't afford to go after multiple ICPs. I think that assumption is radically and rapidly changing. So I would just challenge affordability around that used to drive niche. That being said, what we have found is the unifying principle of ICP tends to be around a singular problem, and finding people with a singular problem around which you can build your messaging and maybe even some of those product features, right, as Roz was talking about in that early stage dance that you're doing, could be also valuable. So bottom line is experiment quickly and maybe think about the ICP being defined predominantly by problem rather than psychographic and demographic.
Thought to that as well, which is the size of the opportunity is both defined both by, how many people are going to want to use the thing, and then also how much they're willing to pay for it. So you can have a pretty small, ICP. It's a product that they can't live without, and they're willing to pay, $1 million a year for it, versus something that, millions of users who's only willing to pay $1 a month for it. Obviously, I don't think there's ever an answer to, is that a big enough audience? It's, well, how does that map to what they're willing to pay? And just also to mention that I think companies are getting a lot more creative now about multiple business models kind of layered. So if you've got, tech leadership, maybe that's your ICP, maybe they're willing to pay a certain amount a month for it. Well, is there another audience that's willing to pay for access to them that adds value? So there's lots of different approaches to make a niche audience a big enough opportunity.
That's great. And as kind of a follow-up for that, because I know we have founders that are both in the traditional product side and then are also in the, agency or development side. As you look at, consumer focused products versus maybe like service-based types of products and business, how does the TAM really impact that, right? Where you have something in the travel space, right, that could very much easily impact, a multi-trillion-dollar total addressable market, but, only capture sub 1% of that. Or if you're, like Carol or someone building in the agency or consultancy side, right, how does consumer versus enterprise/business impact how specific you need to be? And Roz, I'll give that to you first as a kind of follow up.
Sure. Might feel like a cop-out answer, but on the consultancy side, it depends what you're trying to accomplish, right? If you want to have, a nice lifestyle where you're, got enough expertise, someone's willing to pay you $300 an hour, you get to work from wherever, then it doesn't need to be huge. If you're trying to scale an agency to where, it's going to be acquired by some world leader, then obviously there's some different math to that. So I think with the agency thing and services, it's just such a different path and so personalized to what you're trying to accomplish. I don't know if there's an analog to, for example, software sales.
Yeah.
Answer that on the software side.
No, that was great. And then I guess Keith or Div, anywhere from the software side or thoughts on the other end of it? Play devil's advocate.
Yeah, for us, I think when you think about software, I think it starts with let's identify the niche and where we are really good at. Because if you're trying to play in all markets, it won't work. But then figuring out where your biggest opportunities are, probably, right? Like it's a lot about that relationship building, more so than anything else. As much as we want to say, yes, it's a product and it's something that will help solve a customer's problem. It's also looking at the broader ecosystem and looking at what the play in those ecosystems could be. So thinking broadly about like the partner ecosystems and everything else that fit in. So that would be the scale part of it that I could think of.
Great. And then Div, have a follow-up for you there too. So really, we talked about validation and ICP, that first question. Now we're kind of going on to engagement. And when you think about your early adopters and your early users. So how do you turn those early adopters into active, engaged users, super users who really are the ones that champion your product?
I love the question because it's leading to the relationships that I mentioned. Because at the end of the day, especially for B2B SaaS, right? Yes, we work on building leads and converting those leads, but they mean only so much unless the customer is adopting the product and they are seeing value in the product. So I'm a big believer of how do we nurture those leads? So when we are creating new products, and this is something recently that I was working on, we had an adjacent product to the market that we were serving, and this was our opportunity to tap into data integration. And we said, hey, why don't we find these early adopters, the customers and partners who's currently using integration and who would now be interested in a data integration product. So we brought them on early on as part of the introduction phase. We beta tested, we showcased what we were building, right? So early on, they are part of that equation of, hey, you're building something that matters to me and I'm getting to give you input and feedback. And that engagement is valuable. So we did customer advisory board, product advisory councils, whatever you want to call it, but it's that meaningful engagement you can bring in. And then your customers and partners are with you through that journey. So they become your early adopters. They're the ones where we had a whole roadmap of these are the sources we were going to add in. And then when we had those conversations with them, they were like, great that you have these 25 sources, but these are the top 5 that's important for me. And if you want me to be an early adopter, you need to bring those top 5 sources. So we switched our roadmap and our vision to help prioritize. And those are conversations you want to be having with those early adopters. So I'm a big advocate for it, and anything you can do to bring those conversations early on. We even did pricing and package testing, right? We were going after a whole new pricing model that didn't exist the way we sell today. And those conversations are probably going to help you make sure you're building the product that's just as Ross said, right? Build the product that your customers are willing to pay and not be completely off the mark where they're like, great product, but not for me today, right? So those are conversations you want to build in. And that's the engagement that I'm looking for when I think about my audience.
Keith, Ross?
Yeah, my experience in building our own platform here over the last 12 months is that our super fans are really those who came in and helped us design, helped contribute knowledge, helped really actively engage with us in R&D. And because our product came accidentally, we didn't set out to build a product. We were actually trying to solve a problem. And we were already collaborating with all those people. When those people came to us and said, well, we want to buy that as a product, we're like, well, that's not really what we were planning to do. Here we are now with, a product and a complete pivot in a business model because of that feedback. But it came out of their core, contribution, and therefore they really do feel owners of what we're doing. And we haven't spent a dime on advertising. 100% of our product users have come from referrals that really started from that core group of 20. So now we're at hundreds.
Just to pivot off both those things, I think that one of the sort of one level up higher theme is like space in your plan to be able to listen to those users and adjust. I've mentioned, we have this roadmap and then went a different direction. And I think I've seen both at the early stage, there's a lot of pressure, I think, to get to revenue. And I personally been down the road of almost being misled or letting by champions and early adopters that were very excited about it. And then you think, oh, we've got it, product market fit, let's go and start selling and, build out your little roadmap. And it turns out, that didn't scale. And so I think taking the lesson I took from that is like, take the time and figure out if you're, raising money, build in that time to work with those customers, keep going until they're so excited they can't live without it, instead of taking that early validation and kind of off to the races with it. And then, it doesn't change that much further. So, in experiences with companies that were way further down the road, similarly, there's a trap of the teams, they have their roadmap, they get commitments, where I've seen really good engagement. One of the best product managers I ever worked with was on one of my teams at Mural, and they were responsible for integration with Microsoft stuff. And we had this roadmap, and they integrated with Teams, and we could have checked the box and moved on. It works fine. But that product manager had, lots of instrumentation, was watching what people were doing, were watching where they were dropping off, having good conversations, working with his engineering and design counterparts, and made the case like, I want to hit pause on the next, quarter worth of work and really dig into taking some of the friction away from the login process, and just had like massively better results in terms of, return users, engagement, et cetera. It was just a good reminder that taking the time to really dig into what's working and stick with it until you get undeniable results is really worth it.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And yeah, we have a question from Nick for Keith, and then I have a follow-up too, kind of with everyone in regards to feedback loops. So Keith, as you talked about, engaging with those early champions and those early customers that helped define, what product or your roadmap, how did you really engage them in those feedback loops? Like, did you offer them either benefits or incentives for engaging, or how did you kind of create those feedback loops to be able to collect all that?
I found, at least this has been my experience, that if incentives are there, the feedback's less valuable and less genuine and less accurate. So we have offered zero. We don't even offer referral fees right now. And we've intentionally kept that out because I don't want the masking that those might create in artificial data. I want to see that we've really achieved genuine fandom out there, right? And so those incentives can just distort. So we simply engaged with people who were also curious and generous. And so part of it is finding that right group of people. Their incentive is they get a better product. Their incentive is if they share this problem, they also are, able to feel great about it. And they have pride of ownership as they're saying, I helped build this, and they're sending 10 friends. I've got one guy in particular who, every single week somebody says, Brian sent them. I'm like, Brian, and so I will say this final piece, which is I've gone back and given, because we're just completing raising a small equity round. We've gone back in and given Brian some stock options as just a gift, but it was not an expectation. And I think that's such a better and stronger relationship.
Thank you for sharing that. And then, for Roz and Div, what are some of the ways that you've seen feedback loops or successful feedback loops be implemented, whether that's, surveys or feedback within an app? Kind of how have you seen that be successful in companies you've been at?
All right, I'll jump in. This isn't exactly, I think, what you're getting at, Brian, but it did remind me, listening to Keith there, that there's another sort of path, I think, to really good feedback, which is indirect from customers. So if you're far enough along to have partners, the last sort of several roles I've had, I've been in the ecosystem. So I'm working a lot with partners that have done integrations. And a lot of times I find customers are way more honest with them, and they're way more honest with us, because customers have this, sort of transaction relationship. If they don't like your product, they can stop using it and then just stop paying you. And that's the sort of the natural path for them to share that feedback at scale. But with partners, they might be working with multiple customers. They might be working with a specific segment. So they're seeing something at a segment level that you don't see. So that's just, a really valuable alternative kind of set of feedback from customers.
I would agree. I think, Ross, thinking about your partner ecosystem is key, because they are probably a neutral players in the market. Analysts are similar. I've usually gotten good feedback through the analyst ecosystem as well. But I'm also a big believer of our customer success team, right? Sometimes it's not necessarily the sales or account teams that you're interacting with, but the actual ones for building and implementing and using the product, and gathering feedback through those conversations are valuable too. Sometimes just having opportunity, especially my favorite time of the year is when I get to go to the user conferences, because you actually hear their passion and their love for your product, or all the things that are going wrong in your product. They'll tell you right then and there. And once you connect with those folks, you want to build those connections with them. So I think cultivating that customer success and advocacy is key. And I'm always looking for those stories, because that's how I build my own customer success stories and case studies and all the video testimonials and the awesome things that come from there to tell others how folks like them are using the product or leveraging the capabilities that are there.
That's great. And so the kind of next question, again, as we're kind of moving along from the validation to the retention model. So this one for you, Keith, as to start, can you share, and I would like to hear ideally, from each of you on this, can you share a real world example where a small change or pivot had a significant or just any impact on your customer retention, whether it was at, from the product side, from the from the consulting side, anything, throughout your past experiences?
Yeah, in our case, we've created this platform that lets you kind of map out all the strategic frameworks like we've been talking about here with personas and positioning and all this, and then turn that into what we call a brand bot so that for marketing purposes, everything is always aligned to that. We were really, really proud of the strategic fidelity that we had. We were super excited about the level of resolution we could offer. Most of our customers didn't care. And so I think what we realized early on was while this makes the product better, while this makes marketing better, what we cared about was not what our core customers cared about. What they cared about was effectiveness of marketing, and the strategy that got there was really going to be judged not on the basis of its purity or its complexity or any of these nerdy things that I might have, but rather, did it perform? Did we get leads from it? And so we pivoted pretty significantly, and we now lead both in message and in our UI UX with the fact that this product is about building better marketing campaigns. It's about generating better leads. It's about creating aligned messaging. We don't even show people in demos nor on most of our materials kind of the nerdy side of it anymore. And that pivot resulted in just a huge spike in conversion rate. So big impact for us.
Yeah, that's great. And then I guess the question to that one is like, how did you realize that they didn't care about it, right? Was it from looking at the analytics and realizing people just weren't engaging with this feature? Was it just them telling you directly, or how did you kind of come to that, epiphany where we didn't need to lean into that?
Yeah, so in our case, most of, because as a culture, at least in this country, people tend to be very polite. I found that they don't really tell us what they're thinking unless we probe hard. And even then, it's still socially awkward. So yeah, I think I love, Roz, your comment earlier about just kind of the right dashboard or analytics in, like, how are you seeing what people are doing? We were just looking at the number of people that were engaging with this part of our software. It was a really simple metric, but how many prompts were they putting in on the strategic side after we did these demos? And the answer was close to zero. They didn't even understand why we thought this was cool. Like, okay. So it was a simple metric. It was reviewing the data. And I will just note, in a shout out to tools like Notebook LM from Google, again, I'm going to be kind of an AI advocate in this, but we take every one of our Fathom calls that's recorded, the entire transcript, and we load that in there. We take every prompt that goes into our application and we load that in there. And then our product team is going through that. I'm going through that. Our marketing team's going through that. And we're saying, are these messages working or not? So every month we've pivoted our complete marketing package of strategic documents, really. We talk about Ella very differently in March than we did in February, than we did in January. So we're on a monthly cycle, not of product features, but of marketing messaging. That's how quickly we're adapting now.
Thank you. Div, Ross.
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the key things that I want to double down on is the relationship between product marketing and customer success. Oftentimes we think, hey, customers see a message on the website, they are interested in your product, they buy the product. And then when they start reading the product, they want to make sure they still feel like it's the same company that they bought from and that they're using the product, right? So building that bridge, and one of the I think one of my favorite stories in my career has been shifting that narrative, similar to what Pete was saying, right? It's like we went from, hey, we have a product, which is our core integration. We have all these adjacent offerings that customers are asking us for all these offerings. So we're creating all these offerings. But at the end of the day, they can't tell the difference between heads and tails of when to use what. So we started putting together a platform narrative and started showcasing how to think about different capabilities and when to bring that into the use cases, their own life cycle of what they're trying to achieve in terms of solving. So building that bridge became important where product marketing lays the foundation and then customer success reinforces how customers can find lasting value. And the success that I saw was when we took that narrative, we had a wheel and we showcased how all of these adjacent 5 products could help support our customers. And then at our user conferences, we would have customers use this wheel to talk about their story and say, hey, I use capability A and capability B, and this is the use case. This is how I'm seeing value in solving my integration needs or my workflow needs or whatever it is, right? So how to kind of translate that and then break it down. That's the small change we were bringing in, but that was a change that impacted everything we were as a company. It shifted our conversation from going and talking to the technical audience and now talking to the business folks who are making those decisions, right? The decision makers, if you will. And that shift, as much as it was a small change from my lens as product marketing, because I was bringing that platform message to life, it impacted UX. It impacted how we talked about our product. We brought iconography into visual design. All of that changed all the way to documentation phase. Great that you're doing all this awesome work, product marketing, but now you're going to shift everything we do in documentation. And this is how long it's going to take us, right? So becoming that ambassador and championing that value and seeing how it impacts our customers. Even analysts shifted how they talked about who we are. And that is, I think, the most value that you could see and say, okay, what we are saying and what we are doing is finally adding up. And that's one example that I could think of.
I'll double down on the platform piece, actually. I mentioned my last couple roles were sort of ecosystem focused. By way of story on how that happened is that I was at Blackbaud after the acquisition, and they're sort of the 800-pound gorilla in that space. But, you know, have been around for 40 years. Software companies have been around for that long. A huge portion of their R&D effort is tech debt and getting, you know, just managing the software that they already have. So one of the disadvantages we had in the market was speed of innovation. And so I got tapped with go figure out how we're going to deliver features faster. And ultimately, after quite a lot of trying different things, ended up really a strong believer in ecosystem. So we accelerated the development of our platform and made it way easier for other companies to build on a developer platform, ship feature function into our core products in a way that felt relatively native, and found that that ecosystem was able to deliver new features way faster than our own internal team. And that relates to retention in a few ways. One is that you know, speed of innovation was an issue with retention. Two is that pretty much in every case, it is a universal that the more things that your customers integrate with your core product, at least in B2B, the stickier they are by a lot, which is almost an investment thing for them, because now there's 2 products that they're sticky to, related to you. And then the sort of third piece of that is, as that becomes a financial and business win for your partners that they're, you know, integrated to, then they want you to be successful. They want you to stay in business. And so that helps with your customer stickiness as well. So just a huge advocate for investing in that platform piece and your partners. I think it helps retention on a bunch of levels.
Perfect. And that's a great segue here to kind of coming up on the end with our last couple questions here. Obviously, we have some time for open Q&A, but as people kind of keep having questions, definitely leverage the chat box for that. But kind of as a follow-up, so how important, obviously stickiness is such a big metric when you look at companies like Uber and others where, right, I think for Uber, maybe glamorized by, you know, what we saw in the film and things like that. But it's like, I think they said once they take 2 rides, they're a customer for life. And so obviously you have examples of very, very sticky products or sticky services, but how much of that really needs to go into a product where or a service where some things just you might not have a customer for life, right? You might have a customer for 2 or 3 years, and that's all either they need that product for or how it adds value. So does everything need to be, again, that Uber, that customer for life, or are some things just shorter life cycles inherently, either for software or services? And then Roz, I'll give you that one to start.
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, obviously it's ideal if they'll stay with you. I mean, I'm sure I don't think ever been in a situation where it was a sort of accepted thing that the life cycle was short. We're always trying to sell for, long-term life, customer value. So I'll be perfectly honest, I can't think of a scenario in the for-profit side. On the nonprofit side, it would be great if your customer life cycle was short because you solve the problem. Personally, mostly don't operate like that. Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, and I think as a follow-up for that, right? I look at the brand messaging behind. I think it was like Bumble or Hinge, right? And the idea was like, the app that's meant to be deleted. And as a funny side story, right? I met my wife on Tinder, right? And so it was one of those things where, yes, we used it, but then we didn't. And so obviously that's their brand messaging where they want that. But of course, would they rather me stay a user for the next, 40 years? Maybe. But I guess that was kind of the contrast that I kind of bring that up. So Roz, definitely get that. And then Keith, would love to hear your thoughts on, how those life cycles are viewed.
Yeah, I guess my perspective is we can actually make a mistake if this is again personal, but if we focus on trying to keep a relationship with a customer for life. I don't look at the things through that lens at all. If I can help somebody for a month or a quarter or 6 months or a year, I am honored to have been on that journey with them. And that may not be something that an investor in my business wants to hear, or a board of directors would love me to say, or if I were a public company, I would probably be pummeled for saying such a thing. Value can be delivered in a moment. Value can actually be delivered in a prospecting call. Value can be created in a friendship or a relationship. And so I guess I just have come to, this is maybe because I've been doing this for 40 years, not look at it as what can I get from somebody over the next period of time and can I maximize that value, but what can I give to them in a moment where it's needed? And so that's kind of more of a philosophical answer, but that's where my heart's at.
Amazing. Thank you.
Fair enough. I think if we can bring value without really having to break our knees, I think that's the best value we can give. And I believe in the same idea, right? Give more than you can get. And I think most leaders in how you define success also help kind of rethink the idea of what does success look like. So yes, customer lifetime value is important for any business, and for SaaS, I think we live and breathe it. But the reality is, if the customers that I have today, so say I'm in the mid-market and I'm going after customers who are in the mid-market segment, but tomorrow I want to get into the enterprise because that's scale and that's growth for me, my mid-market customers are not going to help me get there, right? So I believe in the philosophy of what got me here is not going to get me to the next level. And sometimes that means your customer lifetime value is also shifting. But it's important for you, whether you're early on in that business trajectory or in that scale and growth trajectory, to help redefine what that lifetime value means. Yes, Uber is a sticky factor, right? I don't know, 2 rides, 3 rides, whatever it is. But if tomorrow something else comes that solves Uber's problem much better than Uber does, I'm going to switch. And that's the customer loyalty that you're going to get. I have friends that will compare Uber and Lyft or any other rideshare now way more into the equation and say, hey, which one's going to give me a better ride, quicker ride, cheaper ride? Those are the criteria. So where does that customer lifetime value and loyalty lie? Not much, unless you're solving that problem, similar to what Ross and Keith said. In that moment in time, who's going to solve my problem the fastest, the quickest, or the most easiest is the reason why Uber even exists in the market today, right? Nobody thinks about taxis anymore for a reason, because it was a painful experience. And the minute we found a better solution, an easier solution, it was all about one click, one button, and I'm there. So that's how I would think about customer lifetime value, but really assess what does that mean for you as a business. And don't just look for other customers and other companies within that market segment have defined customer lifetime value. I know a lot of folks talk about, let's look at CSAT and NPS. And if customers are really happy about using our products, then yes, we have achieved something. So leverage it to what value we can bring, but always into that lens. And hopefully we'll figure it out as we go.
Amazing.
I had one little thing because you mentioned Tinder, and then Keith, you're like, oh, I'm not attached to it if I add value. I think there's something there actually where, similarly, dating world, if you seem like really you want them to not leave, then they're more likely to leave. If you seem a little detached, they're like it gives the customer this level of relaxation that the choice is theirs. And I'm seeing in enterprise B2B, there's push for like longer and longer contracts, 3 years, you're locked in. And those companies are getting a lot of heat from transaction-based, platform fee-based companies that are moving really quickly because the customers feel like it's my choice. I'm here as long as I want to be. And then ironically, they end up, being very sticky.
Thank you for that. And then I think so I've got one last question here, actually kind of building up on what Dirk said. But before I ask that, I wanted to give any, people in the audience any other questions specifically that you have either from your own examples or anything that you wanted to ask our panel here before we kind of go into the closing question. Hopefully that means that we've had some good ones here so far. And so, kind of going off of Dirk's comment, right, about collecting customer testimonials and success stories. So I look at that somewhat very differently between what we have with a, service or consultancy based business than kind of what Div was saying, right, Uber, Lyft, where, so many people, right, you're going on a ride. Hey, let me just pull up Via, right, all the rides and see who is the cheapest, who's going to get me there, right? I don't care what brand it is, as long as I can trust them and they'll get me there. Versus when you look at some consultancies, right, there are, I'm sure, literally millions probably of software development agencies out there that could get you from A to B, right? From leadership coaches or executive coaches, things like that. So what does the role of testimonials play when something like, service-based, where, okay, I want to work with a specific coach or this personality or this brand, even though they're twice as much, right? Versus the role of software where there might be thousands of similar competitors out there. So how do testimonials play a role in that? And how have you seen it best leveraged through your companies? And Div, maybe we'll start with you for this one.
I would say testimonials probably amplify who you are, and it also amplifies who you're looking for as your ideal, going back to that ideal customer profile we were talking about, right? So if you have the right testimonials, and I've seen this in B2B SaaS, I've seen this as a mentor as well. The energy you put out is the energy you receive, if it makes sense in A44. And that's what I see when I think about, I'm a customer, I'm in the healthcare space or retail or financial services. I see that the company customers who are in financial services, healthcare or retail, that's enough validation for me to say, okay, if they've done it for this customer and they're using it for the specific use case, it'll solve my problem. I see value. I'll probably go to all the review sites, like G2, Trust Radius, any of the analyst firms to see, okay, how was this company positioned within those spectrums? And that will give me an enough assessment, right? Nobody goes and buys any product today without reviews. So these testimonials help kind of amplify that story and help folks realize, okay, I am like them. This story resonates with me. If you can put me as a hero in my life and your product, your software or solution is going to help me solve it, great. I see the same thing when I'm a mentor, the reason people come to me and ask for help or support, whether it's in their career, whether it's leadership, whether it's product marketing, is in that same spectrum, right? Something about me connects with them. Sometimes it is my stories about stress and anxiety or mindfulness. Sometimes it is, hey, you are a product marketing leader. You've been an advocate for a decade now. We have X problem. I'm trying to solve a go-to-market initiative or pricing initiatives. Can you help me? That connection, I think, comes from those testimonials. And the more you can hone in on those testimonials, I think the better. So I would start there and then see what kind of story you are hearing about the work that you do and how to leverage that to shape your future agency or the work that you're doing.
Great. Thank you. Keith, how about you?
So I guess maybe a broader comment first, depending on company stage and competitive landscape and the criteria that they're using, we've seen value of them and the use of them can vary really significantly. In our case, though, I guess first a personal confession. I love nothing more than like when Claire sent me an email this morning and said, literally, the name of our product is called Ella. And she walks through this whole like 3-paragraph thing and then says, will you please give Ella a raise? And then signed it with a heart. Like that just provides so much energy for our team and the work that we're doing. So it created just tremendous value internally. If I turn around and try to monetize that and put that on our website, it doesn't feel right to me. So I don't think we're going to use that externally, but we use that internally. The final thing I'll say is maybe in our particular case, we have this interesting dynamic where some customers have been more excited. In fact, most customers are more excited because they feel like we're a secret and a secret weapon than they do kind of the dynamic of everybody's using us. And so we've actually, because of the earlier stage, we have been strategically just letting that be. And we're talking about ways of amplifying the fact that we're actually a secret. We don't have reviews out there. We don't have everybody talking about the product. We do have as a product that's making one heck of a difference for businesses. You know, we're going to be more speakeasy-like, if you will. You got to know the secret password to even ask to get on the waiting list for those private products, as opposed to sign up for a free trial and put in your credit card. So that's just where we're at and what we're doing for our brand.
Thank you. And then Roz, please, final thoughts. Bring us home on that.
Sure. Aside from the obvious value in almost any event you could use them of customer testimonials, to me, it's also an opening for a relationship and to show your customers that it adds value for them and their lives when they are giving you feedback. Positive feedback is great. Yeah, there's often opportunities to include them, as speakers at events that you're at, and they're going to just be a much more trusted source of experience and information about your product, even than you are. And that's great for, if you think about the individuals, that's great for someone's career. At Blackbaud, there's a champions program that is a formalized, hey, you're going to have input. We're going to ask you if you want to, see an early preview of a product and give us some feedback, or participate in different discovery. And it's all things that are, for those individuals, good professional development, and they get the satisfaction of saying, like, I gave that feedback and now it's in this product that tens of thousands of people are using. So anyway, there's a give and take there. I think that helps build those relationships over time.
Well, thank you all so much for your obviously amazing insights and knowledge on this topic. If there's a way, do you want to share your LinkedIn's, or what's the best way for people who have questions or way to get a hold of you? Do you prefer, I don't know if you want to drop it in the chat, or what do you prefer, email or LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's great.
Perfect. So yeah, so for those of you, and obviously, Keith, Roz, Div are all in Gilder as well, so you can find them, through the Slack channel as well. But LinkedIn's always going to be the best way. They'll drop that in the chat there. This whole session has also been recorded, so we'll share that out if you want to kind of look back at said insights, and maybe we'll take Keith's strategy and pop this into Notebook LM as well and get a good summary of everything. Again, thank you everyone for joining and for your great questions. Our goal with these is always to kind of take some nice actionable takeaways for how you can apply this to your own businesses. So if you have any follow-ups, please feel free to connect with Roz, Keith, and Div through their LinkedIn's. And yeah, we'll give everyone a couple minutes back here to enjoy the day. Tyga, do you have any final thoughts?
Just, quick announcement to everybody. We're having the first, well, I don't know, probably like second or third kind of more uplifting event focused on, just feeling more resilient as being an entrepreneur. So be on the lookout for that event. It's on April 3rd, hosted by Armando Vera Carvajal. And it's not going to be, super product market tech focus. It's really focused on founder resilience and mental health. So we hope to see you there. And we also have our speed networking event as well next week, March 20th. And we hope to see everyone there too.
Yep. So good. Thank you all. Thank you, Keith, Roz, Div, and then we'll see you at the next one. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, all.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.